Hello, this is Arthur Bush. You're listening to Radio Free Flint. My podcast guest today is author Edward Renahan. Mr. Renahan has wrote the book The Life of Charles Stewart Mott, an industrialist and philanthropist. Mr. Mott also is known as Mr. Flint. Music is brought to you today by Colin Ort. It's called the Flint River Blues. We'll also play it on the outro. Hope you enjoy part 2 of our podcast, Charles Stewart Mott. So if I look at Mr. Mott's life, to make things simple, which was a very complicated and long life, there were various inflection points in his life. One period of time was his establishing his business in Flint and then selling it, moving to Flint and then selling it, roughly between 1905 and 1912. Mm-hmm. And then something we haven't talked about, and I'd like to spend a little bit of time with you on this. There was this ventures into politics, which roughly, elective politics, was roughly between 1912 and 1930. I actually add another 10 years to 40 because he served in Republican Party activities as an officer of some kind. And then there's the establishing of the foundation. Another major thing in his life was the Union Industrial Bank. So if we can, with a little bit, if we've got a half an hour, we could maybe go over a couple of these because I think they're things that we don't know about Charles Mott in the main. So let's start with Willie Durant and his relationship with Willie Durant. That Mr. Mott wasn't always so sure about William Durant.
No, neither were Sloan or DuPont. They all had their misgivings about Billy Durant was a great visionary, and of course founded General Motors, but he had a habit of his practical acumen didn't quite match his grand vision and ambition. While General Motors looked a great success from the outside, and there was lots of activity. The back office was a mess. The company was at one point during Billy Durant's tenure very highly levered. He played fast and loose with capitalizations. This is why he incorporated the firm in Delaware, because there was very lax regulation as far as capitalization and manner of collateralization of purchases. And so he was able to create a sort of hall of mirrors sometimes with companies that had little or no real capitalization being capitalized by investments from other companies that also had little or no real capitalization. Eventually became quite a problem. That's why Pierre DuPont had to come in, sort of save things. So there was generally among the hierarchy of General Motors through the years, skepticism of Billy Durant.
He was really good at talking a lot of people out of money in Flint.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally.
And a good number of them got very rich as a result.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. But it was because they came in. It was because of Mott and Sloan and Mott sort of cracking the financial whip that a lot of people made. Especially Mott. Mott was, in his day, before he gave the bulk of his fortune to the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, was he didn't have a controlling interest, obviously, but he was the single largest holder of General Motors stock among not just any individual, but any other entity. There were mutual funds who owned less of General Motors than Mott.
But Mr. Mott's involvement with the corporation also extended to a lengthy service on its board of directors.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Many decades. Hell, he attended his last annual meeting just a month or two before he died.
In what sense we can hold Mr. Mott responsible for the legacy of General Motors Corporation and such things as environmental issues and so on. But to what degree was he involved in the actual operation of the company? In other words, nobody expects, at least during his period of time, that he would have been aware of some of the environmental degradation that was going on as a consequence of the operation of this company. But to what extent was he ever empowered to to the degree that we would look back and say, he ought to have known better than to do that.
He wouldn't have been in the area of the company where anyone, if anyone, was looking at environmental impacts. Once again, it was just a period before that became something that most people were thinking about. His key contributions to General Motors were he's, in addition to being on the board for decades, he served for a very long time as the senior vice president in charge of various aspects of the firm. And his chief interest was in manufacturing and design. That was really what he really, and he would collaborate with Kettering quite a bit on that.
Right. He wasn't involved to the extent in day-to-day management of the operation, is what you're trying to say.
No, he was involved in the management of design and also the management of production processes in the plant. How can we do this part of the task better?
Flint was epicenter for civil rights and housing in the 60s. There has
good reason.
And I was aware previously of Flint's history, especially in the Civic Park neighborhood where GM put up a bunch of houses, and it spoke about in the book Principles of Living. But those houses, as many in Flint, contained what we call restrictive covenants in law, which basically forbade the owners, so people taking possession of these houses, from transferring possession to people of color.
Absolutely.
And then there was the open housing issues that emerged in the early 60s, the selection of Floyd McCree as the first black mayor. So my question to you is simple. What were Mott's thoughts about these issues? I mean, he was a director of a company that actually sold houses and said they couldn't transfer them to black people. Did you find anything that talked to those subjects?
I found nothing that indicated that Mott, well, first of all, he wasn't directly involved with that aspect of things, that financing company that did the housing. But that being said, I found nothing that indicated that Mott raised any concerns or criticism with regard to redlining. It just wasn't there. Talking about 1915, 1920,
There were a hell of a lot of houses built in Flint during his life, and his mission. It was his mission, in part, from what I understand from your work and others, that he really promoted the building of more houses because he had all these people living in the shadows of Buick in tar paper shacks. He had to.
Oh yeah, no, he aggressively pursued that, and was ambitious in that area. Unfortunately, I can't say that he raised a red flag over redlining. He didn't. He just let it go.
Now, Flint had a public referendum during his life that dealt with the issue of redlining and open housing. Were you able to find anything in his diaries about that?
No, I couldn't find anything at all. No comment, yay or nay.
So let's go back here for a second. He ventured into politics in 1912, remained involved until, as we said earlier, 1940. His first interest in politics came after the socialists were elected. I think they elected 3 city councilmen and Mayor Thomas Menton. That seemed to catch Mr. Mott's attention.
Yeah, and the attention of other powerful industrialists, other GM people, because the town was rapidly becoming a General Motors town. And the feeling, there's no better way to express this, the feeling among Mott and his clique was that having a socialist mayor and socialist domination, largely of politics in the city, just wasn't a good look. Nothing more than that.
It's also not very good business.
Right, yeah. So they wanted a change. And that's why Mott was recruited and agreed to run.
The socialists in that time, Mr. Menton and his comrades, as they probably called one another, they ran on issues essentially about wages, hours, and working conditions, and a few things thrown in, like they wanted to be able to take a bath and they didn't want to walk through puddles to get to work because it was a lot of flooding.
Right.
And these kinds of issues that went to the quality of life of the city. But the first thing that they ran on was that their work hours are bad. People weren't being paid right. They had child labor. The whole panoply of allegations. I don't know if any of them are true, but it seemed like they were. A good number of them were. Isn't that really? I mean, you've researched this guy pretty carefully. Yeah. I mean, you have to put yourself in his spot. He just bought this company essentially. I mean, he's put all his money into it.
Right.
In 1912, he cashed in and he sold his company to GM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wouldn't that have been animating to him?
Yeah, totally. Well, it's twofold because he, as I talked about before, his blind spot with labor rights and all of that. He didn't like the idea of labor dictating anything to capital. So that was definitely a part of why he ran. No. Plus, however, he didn't think that the infrastructure problems could be addressed adequately by the current administration, because he wanted the puddles off the streets too, and he wanted the sewers run in, and he wanted all of this infrastructure stuff to happen, and it largely did under his mayorship. But you're right. I mean, it was the labor aspect of it was he wanted to shut it down. Workers' rights aspect of the socialist agenda. You're completely right.
Essentially, what Mr. Mott, he was an expert politician. He may not have ever run before, but he had natural ability and skill, and he was strategic. Can you tell us how it came to be in the intricacy, if you will, if you know, what made him successful in running in a blue-collar town with largest shareholders?
Well, he was once again, this duality, he was very popular with men on the floor of the plants, just as an entity, as a person. And he did have a good way. He didn't have a lot of bluster. He had a lot of very concrete promises and plans, and here's what I'll do, and here's how I'm going to do it. Whereas, bear in mind, there was a sentiment, as much as there was a sentiment for unionization on the plant floor, there was also those who didn't have a sentiment for unionization, who viewed themselves as company men, and who sort of accepted the paternalism of General Motors. They're building me a house. They're giving me this, that, and the other thing. They've set up a stock option contribution plan for me. And there were people who were okay with the status quo and people who weren't. So it wasn't like there was a united front of labor going to go vote for the socialists.
Well, what I found was really quite remarkable about his frolic into politics was the fact that he was able to convince both Democrats and Republican parties at the time to not oppose his candidacy, and he created a third party, which was called the Independent Party. Looking back at history, and especially the history of Flint, the last guy in modern history who tried that trick called himself the American Independent Party and actually won in Genesee County, and that was George Wallace. In 1968, he actually coalesced any real opposition to his candidacy at the beginning of the race by convincing the Democrats and Republicans to drive behind him.
Yeah. And the one thing that those two parties could agree on was that they didn't dig the socialists.
He got his program going, and I think he even passed a millage at the time to implement some of his capital spending, I think for roads or water or something. And then, he's got this thing going. He decides he's going to serve again.
Right.
Essentially what happened was the people of Flint decided what was good for General Motors might not be good for them. He was defeated in 1915.
Right.
What I walked away from that, I mean, that's not that unusual to lose an election. But what is unusual is to hear, I mean, I never saw this side of Mr. Mott, and it probably was the biggest insight we have of him that I can see. I didn't read his diary. He seemed genuinely hurt by the fact that he was defeated and rejected by the citizens at the time.
Yeah, because he felt, he had great confidence in himself, very high esteem for himself. He felt that he had been doing the town a big favor by serving as mayor. He thought they were lucky to have him. And when he got repudiated in the polls, he felt like, it's almost like, well, that's the thanks I get for annoying myself with this civic duty, trying to be of public service. Well, good luck to them. So you're right. Wasn't the best look for him by any means.
In a previous interview that you gave, at one point you were asked about Mr. Mott running for governor, and I think at that time you said he didn't run for governor of Michigan. Information I learned and discovered was he in fact did run in the primary.
Did run in the primary.
So he ran in 1924 in the Michigan Republican primary to become governor. Do you know why he wanted to be governor? There's very little I found that explained it.
What I came away with from what I read in the papers was he had kind of been recruited to run for governor, to throw his hat into the primary, and did so rather half-heartedly. He kind of felt pressured to do it, then lost the primary almost with a sense of relief.
Mr. Mott was a winner at business. There's no question about that. His ambitions in business may have been satisfied, but his political ambitions didn't seem to ever be satisfied. He never had the same success at politics as he did in business. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, but I think it's also a fair statement to say he really didn't have any grand long-term ambitions in politics. I don't think he saw himself as being president of the United States or anything like that.
There was some talk by Mott that he wanted to be a United States congressman in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, he kicked around that idea. He kicked around a lot of ideas, from the time to time. Really, from 1926 on, his chief interest, the one key thing that he was really into, was that foundation. He
set that foundation up. So when we look at people that are setting up foundations with this kind of wealth, we say, well, they're stacking the laws for the rich so they don't have to pay taxes, or there's some other kind of angle. Was there any kind of angle that motivated him to set up the Mott Foundation or any of the others that he set up, like the Ruth Mott Foundation?
Right. I suppose, as with any charitable endeavor, there is some sort of tax benefit. He was really focused on charitable giving. I believe he started it off with a gift of about $100,000 or something, and then made incremental donations every year thereafter until the early 1960s when, at the request of Harding, he decided to, all things being equal, to give the bulk of his fortune to foundation in one fell swoop, and really set fuse for all that happened later. He himself personally went to the office and ran that foundation every day.
How much money do you figure he gave away in his lifetime?
More than $200 million. Of course, that was invested. The income off the investment is what funded everything. In 2016, when they were celebrating their 90th anniversary, the Mott Foundation,
yes,
reported that they had in that 90-year period made grants in excess of $3 billion with a B. We're still sitting on a corpus in excess of $3 billion.
The saga of the Union Industrial Bank kind of looms over Charles Mott, considered by historians to be the largest bank failure in the Great Depression. Mr. Mott had a lot of interest in the Union Industrial Bank.
Yeah. Of course, there was fraud involved there, as you probably know.
Mr. Mott was one of the incorporators of either the Union or the Industrial Bank, because those two had merged themselves at some point.
Right.
Do you know why he started a bank?
I think he just thought it would be a good investment, and maybe thought the town needed another bank or something. But I think it was just an investment for him.
Best I can determine, there were 4 banks in Flint at the time that he got into the bank business. And I don't know if he was the principal or what that was. Do you know what his role was?
I mean, he was on the board. He didn't run the bank. He wasn't the president of the bank or anything. And he was an investor. I know that when the bank went into the financial difficulties, he spent a lot of his own money reimbursing.
The Mott Foundation building was initially named the Union Industrial Bank building as it was being constructed, and I assume after it was finished. And then eventually the name was changed. Do you know anything about that?
I gather that the foundation purchased the building from the remains of the bank. Perhaps the foundation had maybe the foundation had investments in the bank and made good on the after the troubles on clawing back the building or something.
The story with the Union Industrial Bank was that there were a number of individuals who were associated with the bank, some high-ranking employees in the bank, vice presidents and so forth, that engaged in stock speculation with the depositors' money.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And then the Depression came.
Yeah, well, then before that came was the stock market crash.
Exactly.
They had a bunch of margin accounts in New York City that had to be paid money because they were losing.
Right.
Gambling with other people's money is what it turns out.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And Mr. Mott then eventually learned, sadly, I'm sure it wasn't a good day for him, his associates at this bank, or many of them were well-known names in Genesee County, had used about $3.5 million. They figured they had incurred a loss, basically embezzled $3.5 million from the bank. Now,
right.
Here's my question. You got a little out of my sequence. Mr. Mott did get to the bottom line pretty quickly and conducted a meeting, as I read in one of the books. It adjourned at 5 o'clock in the morning the day. 5 o'clock in the morning is a long time to meet. But I guess when you're talking about that money, it's a lot. But in Mr. Mott's situation, once he learns about this, tell us what action he took.
Well, basically, he dug into his own pocket and filled the hole.
He did that pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, immediately. I believe with cash. I think he withdrew funds from a bank in Detroit or something. There's a story, and had it delivered up to Flint and to deposit into the Union Industrial.
That Mr. Mott went down to Detroit, to his offices in Detroit. He went to the bank. He got $3.5 million in cash with 3 vehicles coming back, armored vehicles, along with himself, who apparently led the parade of people bringing money back. Do you know anything about that?
That's basically what happened. Yeah. He thought that fast, immediate action, concrete action had to be taken to shore things up, and he was liquid enough to do it. Right. So he did it.
He had insurance. I mean, this bank had insurance for losses.
Yeah, but the hole needed to be filled then.
Now, why did it need to be filled then?
I believe there were cash flow problems. $3.5 million. I
mean, the history books that I read said that there were people that were breaking the windows of the bank and had overturned cars outside of the bank.
Yeah, so people wanted action.
Now
this is before the FDIC.
Of course, they were out their money. But he was out money himself. Do you know what his total loss was?
A lot.
He had insurance. He had insurance, and these guys still had margin accounts, so there was some money still hanging out there.
Right.
But I heard that he had recovered about $2 million of the 3.5
That sounds about right. And the criminals, for lack of a better phrase, were on the hook for whatever they, still owed to that was their problem.
They all went to prison in the same cell, most of them. But number one, most people that aren't associated with the embezzlement aren't the ones usually that go race to get the money. I've never seen that happen before. And you've explained at least your sense of urgency with him. I think there's another explanation for it that you might have missed.
I think he also thought his reputation was involved.
Now, he did have the cooperation of the local media, which they didn't blow the whistle on this embezzlement immediately. That is the Flint Journal.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know anything about that, or what his relationship was with?
I know that he had close relationships with, he made a point of having close relationships, frankly, with various editors and reporters at the Flint Journal and elsewhere.
People that were already upset.
Right, exactly.
And so a lot of publicity howling around this until the facts were known would not have been good for Flint. And
I think Mott wanted, when the story came out, he wanted one of the facts that became known was that the hole had been filled, that he had taken care of it. That sort of puts the pin back into the hand grenade.
He invited Mr. Beagle to come visit him at Applewood. I don't know, maybe his diary reflects some notes about what his intention was.
I do not know. I would assume that they were, he was trying to find out what the nature of the prosecution would be. I wouldn't see him as trying to influence the prosecution, but he probably wanted to be up to speed on what the heck it was going to be.
Well, or if Beagle even knew about it, because this meeting took place almost very, very short time after the embezzlement became known.
Okay.
So I'm not sure law enforcement was even involved until maybe even at the same occasion. And there might be other explanations which would be not nefarious, but that he wanted the prosecutor to know immediately what the situation was.
Yeah, I think it would be more like that. I mean, he was pretty above board in most of his dealings, let me put it that way. You might not have liked what he was doing or saying, but he wasn't trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes usually, if you know what I mean.
Right. Well, there's some historical record and some lingering about this meeting with Charles Beagle in Flint, and also in some of the other writings by other people of the time. That really centers on what you just were talking about, and that is the purpose of the meeting. There's one account that says that Mr. Beagle's son said that the meeting was there to try to pressure him not to prosecute. Harding Mott, on the other hand, claims his dad didn't do that. Neither of them were present at the meeting.
Right. I don't see that as likely that Mott would be pressuring Beagle not to prosecute. I would think that from a PR point of view, and which is one way that Mott usually looked at things, it would be better for the bank to have the idea of this was a few rotten apples, we're cleaning house, they're going to jail.
Well, my experience with banks in Flint, and I do have experience with banks, is that they generally don't take that tact. Their tact is, we don't want to tell anybody. In fact, they'll lose a lot of money before they'll allow somebody to get involved in an investigation about embezzlement, especially big ones. And that has been a point of contention in Flint for many years. So that's why I've asked that question, because in my mind, that's kind of an irregular deal. I do know the family of Mr. Beagle. Some feeling on their part, and this is the last question.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
I really don't want to be an adversary in this situation, but...
No, it's not like that at all. No.
I'm not trying to sully his reputation. He's dead, and he did a lot of things for my family and others. But one of the things that is sort of hanging out there as well, the Beagle, John Beagle, who is the son of Charles Beagle, has reported, and I think it might be reported by other sources, that Charles Mott wasn't happy with Mr. Beagle's work, in which he got a whole bunch of guilty pleas and sent people to prison, and there were trials that he also won.
Right.
And these men were sent to prison for what appears to be just reasons, and for, I don't think, an excessive amount. In fact, I looked at the size of that embezzlement. Probably today that was appropriate. I don't think we'd see anything different. What we did see that's not unusual, and that is people taking action against a prosecutor for the type of cases that he's brought. And in this case, at least Beagle's son claims, and there might have been other support for this, that Mr. Mott organized against Mr. Beagle, saw him defeated in his election, that is Charlie Beagle. Did you cover any of this in your book? If you did, what did you say? And if you didn't?
I really didn't. I didn't go that far into the bank issue. I do know that I saw letters that Mott wrote to people after the fellows had gone to prison, saying that it was inevitable that they go and that they deserved to go, but he wished them well in the future and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think there was a book written by somebody explaining the Great Depression, and that they were more focused on the crash of the market itself. And I can't remember the name of that book. So you don't have any information about Mr. Mott's role in the election of defeating a prosecutor.
No, the defeat of Beagle, no, I don't.
Lastly, I grew up in Flint, and I like to think that everything that affected me in a good way growing up was because of Charles Stewart Mott. And I was chatting with some friends the other day who said, Mr. Mott, everything about it, my baseball league and team, my community school where I got to play in the gym and keep the cops, keep me from having the cops take me home. All this kind of stuff. The health center, which I went to as a child, they had a foot problem. It's just endless. I mean, this guy's fingerprints are all over the lives of people to this day. Flint obviously is a different place now than when I grew up. Now that you've studied this guy to this extent, do you have any opinions about Flint today?
I think I've spent a lot of time in Flint while writing this book. For about a year and a half, I spent half my time in Flint. I see Flint, frankly, as a town today that is slowly clawing its way back from a very bad place. I know of a lot of enthusiastic, smart people who are working in Flint right now to improve things, not the least the two Mott foundations, but also others. And I see a lot of investment going on downtown. The Durant Hotel being made into luxury housing and so forth. I think the place is headed in the right direction, especially with the broad footprint of the two colleges.
Now, the Mott Foundation, you've had a lot of contact with them and a lot of contact with their leaders and with the Mott family themselves.
Yeah.
One of the things that makes Flint much different than a lot of industrial Rust Belt cities that have experienced deindustrialization is that they don't have a $3 billion foundation sitting in their center of the city.
Right.
Flint has had a lot of, one point, the biggest corporation in the world sitting all over our city. In all of your work, did you see any indication at all that the Motts wouldn't continue this kind of philanthropic activity toward the city of Flint?
Oh, I see every indication that they will. They're deeply involved and committed. There's a deep understanding in the family that the fortunes of the family come directly out of Flint. Okay? They get that. That's why you will continue to see committed, giving from the Ruth Mott Foundation and from the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation onward. I mean, they're very cognizant what Charles Stewart Mott had in mind when he set this organization up. And although they've spread the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, anyway, although it has spread to a worldwide focus, it's also very much got the focus of Flint to this day. I don't see that changing. Even family members like Mary Ann, who basically live far away from Flint, are deeply committed and are deeply involved. Not just committed in a throw money at things kind of way, but involved in the details of grant making and community engagement. The boards of both organizations, in addition to including Mott family members, are also peppered with community activists, contemporary community activists on the ground in Flint.
Did you ever see any indication of this in other places or in your experience?
Not really, but I experienced it in Flint. I know exactly what you're talking about, because I would bump into people around town. What are you doing? Well, I'm writing A Life of Mott. The interest in local history, not just Mott, but local history in general, of the man on the street in Flint was nearly constant. When the book was done and I had a book signing in Flint, we sold about over 400 copies in one day to all make and manner of people who just, I want to learn about Mr. Mott and Flint. I got this real sense of the town and this real sense of community throughout my days there. Frankly, I came away with, I feel a certain kinship and affinity with Flint now, to be honest with you.
So, Ed, does that make you a Flintstone too?
I guess so. Honorary, maybe. I'll head the Newport, Rhode Island Flint fan club.
Ed Renahan, it's a blast talking to you.
I enjoyed it too.
You're an interesting guy.
Okay.
I'll talk to you.
Thanks, Arthur.
Broke out in rashes, some were losing their hair. They complained to the mayor, but he just didn't care. He said, Flint River water, well, it's pure and fine. He said, don't you worry, people, I drink it all the time. Dr. Mona knew that the water was bad. She gathered all the research that she had. She released a study. That study said, all your little children have been poisoned with lead. Flint River water tastes like turpentine. Flint River water tastes like turpentine. They lied about the water. Now people are sick and dying. Just shows what the system will do. It'll poison your children and lie to you. You can tell them the facts, they'll still say they're right. They didn't know the truth, well, it's in plain sight. Flint River water tastes like turpentine. Flint River water tastes like turpentine.